I spent nearly 20 years in TV news and media, and I've been fascinated to observe the changing relationship between space and the other axes of work as they've evolved over time. I'm talking about technology, workflows, people and their organization, the consumer demand for products. So let me just take you through that brief history as I've seen it. In a pre-digital age, it was all about analog technology and big linear processes, studios, massive studios, and lots of physical equipment and thousands of tapes. The technology we used was the key determinant in this system. It dictated how we used our space and how we structured ourselves. So, for example, there were technical and editorial staff, or techies and journos, as we affectionately called ourselves, and there were technical areas, and the newsroom, of course. So then, in about 1999, technology started going digital. The first non-linear editing systems came about, a bit like the iMovie we all know and love today. So journalists started making their own, or editing their own video. Within that same space, therefore, technology was changing workflows and the way people were organised. And then in the early noughties, the web became much more widely used. So within that same space, the technology had created demand for news websites, and to stay relevant, of course, news organisations had to be on this new platform. And that meant a second product, which needed a team working on it, creating new workflows and further changing the people structure. Now, of course, though, we're well into an age of cloud, mobile and multi-platform delivery. Media brands nowadays compete with all kinds of content creators on all sorts of platforms. But significantly, digital collaboration tools like Slack and Trello and Asana have now made online collaboration really easy. So the big change here is that technology is again changing the workflow so that people can work anywhere, meeting the demand for all those new products on those new platforms, which means that space now is no longer just the office. In fact, the future of work, I believe, is one where space, and not just the office, technology and workflows should all be considered together. As we rethink space in the future of work, it's impossible to separate where we are from the technology we use and the workflows we create to do it. So we no longer need to be confined by space and technology. Instead, how we work and situate ourselves should be determined by our people. So therefore, the biggest determinant of a company's spatial operation should be the company's values. That's the operating system of behaviours based on what it believes to be the right thing to do. So the big question now for technology and property leaders to consider is this: how do you live your values, your company's values, in the space you use? So what are your company's values and how do you bring them to life in your space for your people? So for example, if collaboration is important to you as a company, what does it look like inside and outside the office? That's to say, across the totality of space your work occupies. How do you facilitate focus, either working together or alone? And conversely, how do you facilitate diversion, breaks away from work? If sustainability is a key part of your values, then the energy consumption of your spaces will be important, as well as the energy people use to travel between those spaces. If your company has made a commitment to carbon neutrality, then how do you achieve that in your space ecosystem? What about flexibility? We're living in a world where rules and safety guidelines are in flux and are likely to continue to evolve in the coming months. How can configurations of space, not just offices, but the mix of remote versus office time, flex while maintaining productivity? How can your people transition between remote and office locations seamlessly? And employee well-being is much higher on the agenda nowadays. It's a big area with many aspects to consider. The ergonomics of working, both in the office and out. How do people move through your spaces in the safest and healthiest way possible? It's not good for us to spend a lot of time sitting down, for example. On the mental health side, Interaction, we know, with colleagues is really healthy. How does your space facilitate that? And also, how do you give your people the space for peace and quiet when they need it? And there's inclusion, which goes hand in hand with diversity. So how do you use your space to make a diverse range of people feel like that they can do their best work for you? It's to do with accessibility, not just for wheelchair users or people with other disabilities, but it's about making spaces open and welcoming. It's about the atmosphere that you create. Also, an aspect of diversity which is often overlooked, but particularly important in tech roles, is neurodiversity. How do you give those who want it the space to think and be alone? In any case, with your space, you can create a sense of belonging for everybody.